Hello everyone, Christmas is right around the corner and it's time to browse for a new Christmas tree. But as we can see here, it's getting very expensive, so we're gonna be making our own in C using the ncurses library. So after installing the ncurses library, we're gonna be including it in our code, and we also are gonna be including standardlib and time.h. We're going to be using ncurses to draw the tree on the screen, and standardlib for input, and time we're going to be using for delays and timeouts. We then have to initialize the colors, and we use define to initialize the color palette. We have 8 colors on ncurses, and we're going to be using some of them in our code. We then create a struct, and we're going to call it tree data, and it receives last key. It's going to be the last key pressed by the user, and the tree size. It's going to be the size of the tree. We then create a function called initScreen, and this is going to be checking if the screen is initialized, and in case it isn't, it's going to do it for us using init.scr, and it's a function from ncurses. It also checks if the terminal supports color. Nowadays most are going to, but there's always a chance here it doesn't, so it's going to do that. It also sets the color 0 as a default for the terminal. It's going to be black in this case. We then initialize no echo, and this is going to prevent the terminal from displaying the last key pressed by the user. And we also use curseSet at 0 to hide the mouse cursor. No delay and timeout are going to make so that getChar doesn't wait for user input, and we then enable the arrow keys using keypad as true, which is going to allow us to use those. We then create a function that we're going to be using a lot in the code, and it's going to be setColor. This is going to attribute color anytime that we need, so we initialize it with the color pairs that we created. Void init key is going to set the default for the key on the keyboard. It's going to be set as -1, and every time the user inputs is going to be changing this value, and we're going to be doing that using this function called handle inputs. So we initialize it with a variable called input, we assign the function getChar to it, and then we create an if statement checking if the value of input is different than -1. If it is, we're going to be passing it as a pointer to last key that we set in the function previously. We then put it in the switch case, and we're going to be checking for which key the user has pressed. In this case, if the user presses Q, being upper or lower case, we're going to be exiting the screen. We then check the size of the tree in this if statement. Every time the user presses the up key, we're going to be checking for the size. So the limit is 50. You can imagine that on the screen we have 2 axes, the Y and the X axis. So the tree size is going to be checking the Y axis, and the limit is going to be 50. So every time we reach 50, the tree is going to stop increasing in size. We then set the default for -1 again, and we break. Same goes for key down, but in this case we're going to be checking if the size of the tree is bigger than 1. And every time the user presses key down, if this condition is true, we're going to be decreasing the size. Key resize is one that we're going to be using for clearing and refreshing the screen every time we change the size of the screen. Okay, now we create a function called drawScreen. This is the function that is going to be displaying the tree on the screen. We initialize 2 variables, I and j, that are going to be using for the 2 for loops that we must have. The first one is going to be for the y-axis, and it's going to be measuring the distance between the top of the tree and the top of the screen. We create another one to get the x-axis, and we divide it by 2 so we can get the tree in the middle of the screen. We then set the color and use mv_add character. This is similar to printf ncurses uses to print on the screen. And we pass it the 2 coordinates and the character that we want to put on the screen. In this one, we're going to be checking the threshold of the size of the tree, the height of the tree, and every threshold we're going to be changing the color. We create another loop so we can put the trunk of the tree in the middle between the branches. We then create another set of instructions that are going to be printing the star, and we also use mvprintw so we can get the asterisk in the coordinates in the middle of the screen above the tree. We then refresh every time so that it doesn't draw a tree every time we increase in size. And now we initialize the main function. And the first thing we do is to create a variable of type tree data and call it tree. We also initialize the curses function init screen and also init key so we can get the default value of -1 for the keyboard. We then create the main loop, and inside of it we put handle inputs, draw screen, and also a function to control the FPS of the application. In my case, I put as 144 Hz because that's my refresh rate, but you might change depending on your case. And to finish off, we close the window and return 0. This is the application running, and it's very Christmassy, as you can see. So you don't have to buy a very expensive Christmas tree. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe, and see you guys in the next one. Merry Christmas.